From the private records of Grand Marshal Altarath of the Kalian Conclave. Historical Analysis Division 7th Cycle, 452nd Rotation. I have studied warfare for 9 centuries. I have commanded fleets that blackened skies and armies that made worlds tremble. I have witnessed the rise and fall of a dozen galactic powers, but nothing in all my long years has prepared me for what I found in the historical archives concerning the species known as humans. Their homeworld Terra was initially catalogued as a low-tier death world. Such classifications are often exaggerated, but in this case, perhaps we were too generous. The planet's biosphere is a perpetual war zone, rampant with predators, parasites, microorganisms, and weather patterns that would exterminate most sentient species, gravity that crushes, temperatures that swing wildly between extremes, atmospheric composition that would be toxic to many spacefaring races, tectonic instability that regularly reshapes entire continents. And yet, somehow, life not only persisted there, but thrived in bewildering diversity. This crucible forged the humans, while our xenobiologists classified them as a mid-range persistence predator with unremarkable physical attributes. This assessment missed something fundamental. They evolved on a world that tried to kill them in 1,000 different ways every day. Their baseline existence was to struggle, adapt, and overcome. Death was their teacher, and they were exceptional students. When we first detected their primitive radio signals, the High Council dismissed them as just another fledgling species, taking its first tentative steps into the cosmic ocean. That they had survived their homeworld was noteworthy, but not unprecedented. We expected them to follow the standard developmental timeline, centuries of cautious exploration followed by gradual colonization of their local system, then perhaps in a millennium or two, the development of practical FTL travel. We were wrong. So catastrophically wrong, the humans achieved FTL capability a mere 83 rotations after their first crewed orbital missions. By comparison, the Corinth took 1,200 rotations, the Bazur required 900. Even the technologically gifted Myth needed 600. In retrospect, we should have anticipated this. A species that evolves on a low-tier death world doesn't have the luxury of gradual development. They either solve problems quickly or they perish. Every challenge on their homeworld, from microscopic pathogens to global climate shifts, represented an extinction-level threat. Their entire evolutionary history was an exercise in accelerated problem-solving under threat of annihilation, and then they exploded outward. Our monitoring stations could barely keep pace with their expansion. Alpha Centauri, Tau Ceti, the Sirius Corridor, the Orion Spur, system after system, falling under human control with frightening efficiency. They moved through space like beings who had spent millennia preparing for this moment, when in truth they had barely discovered electromagnetic communication a few centuries earlier. What was most remarkable was not just the speed of their expansion, but their ability to thrive in environments that should have been hostile to them. Gas giant moons with crushing gravity, scorched worlds orbiting too close to their stars, frozen planets in perpetual night. The humans adapted to each new environment with unsettling ease, as though their death world origin had prepared them to consider any habitable world, no matter how marginal, as a paradise by comparison. Within a single Kalian lifetime, barely 3 centuries by their reckoning, they had established what they called the Terran Confederation. A sprawling empire spanning thousands of light years. The High Council's initial reaction was dismissive. Uncontrolled expansion, they said. They will collapse under their own weight. It was the accepted wisdom. Every galactic civilization that had attempted such rapid growth had imploded, torn apart by supply line failures, communication breakdown, cultural disintegration, or rebellion. But the humans endured, thrived even. And that is when the Council finally ordered a comprehensive analysis of their methods. What we discovered haunts me still. The common assumption among xenohistorians was that such rapid expansion must have come at a terrible price. Billions dead in resource wars, entire species subjugated or exterminated, ecosystems devastated beyond recovery. The standard imperial model, in other words, the path followed by the Dan, the Pothar, and sadly at times our own conclave. This expectation was reinforced by their death world origin. Species from such harsh environments typically approach expansion with ruthless pragmatism. The Krell evolved on a world of comparable hostility and left a trail of sterilized planets in their wake. The Morrigan, also Death World natives, exterminated any species they deemed potential competitors. Such behavior is not malicious, merely the logical extension of survival strategies that worked on their homeworlds. But the human expansion defied these expectations. Their casualty figures were orders of magnitude lower than any comparable imperial endeavor in recorded history. Their environmental impact assessments would make a Phelan conservationist weep with joy. The subject species within their sphere reported levels of autonomy and quality of life that seemed almost impossible. Most perplexing of all was their approach to ecosystem preservation. Unlike most Death World species who view alien biospheres as potential threats to be controlled or eliminated, humans demonstrated an almost reverential attitude toward biological diversity. They maintained vast preserves of alien flora and fauna, invested tremendous resources in conservation efforts, and integrated environmental sustainability into their expansion models at fundamental levels. This behavior seemed at odds with their evolutionary background, until I discovered a cultural artifact from their early space age, a philosopher who theorized that humans had already conquered their homeworld so thoroughly that they had begun to mourn its wildness. Having tamed their death world, they perversely began to miss the challenge it represented. Their conservationist impulse was not born of harmony with nature, but of having so completely dominated it that they now sought to preserve what remained as a monument to their own origins. I could not reconcile these facts. How could any species expand so far, so fast, with so little bloodshed? The answer, when I finally uncovered it, was both elegant and terrifying. The humans had not avoided the cost of empire building. They had merely shifted it. Consider the Arcturian campaign. The official records show a bloodless annexation, diplomatic overtures, mutual defense treaties, economic integration. Not a single shot fired. Yet when I cross-referenced personnel records from that period, I found something curious. Small, specialized units deployed to Arcturus in the weeks before formal contact. Units with innocuous designations like Cultural Integration Team and Diplomatic Security Detail. I dug deeper, classified after-action reports, redacted medical records, fragmented communications. Slowly, a pattern emerged. The humans had pioneered what they called preemptive targeted intervention. Before revealing themselves to a new civilization, they would send in these specialized teams to identify and neutralize specific threats. Not entire governments or armies, but key individuals. Those who would resist violently. Those who would sacrifice millions for their own power. Those who would rather see their civilization burn than change. With surgical precision, these individuals would disappear, sometimes physically, sometimes socially, compromised, discredited, isolated. By the time the main human diplomatic corps arrived, the most dangerous obstacles to peaceful integration had simply ceased to be factors. In the Arcturian campaign, official records showed 0 casualties. My investigation revealed the actual number: 17. 17 lives against the millions that would have died in a conventional conquest. This pattern repeated across their expansion. On Tau Ceti III, in the Orion Spur, 62 spread across 5 worlds. The Sirius corridor required 104. I am a soldier. I have ordered the deaths of thousands when necessary, but there is something profoundly unsettling about the mathematical coldness of the human approach. They had refined violence to its purest essence, distilled it down to the minimum effective dose. 104 lives to secure 37 star systems without a war. The efficiency is beautiful in its way, and monstrous. This efficiency, I believe, is another adaptation from their Death World origin. On a planet where resources are scarce and threats abundant, species learn to conserve energy and minimize risk. Every unnecessary expenditure could mean extinction. The humans simply applied this principle to warfare and expansion on a galactic scale. A particularly chilling example comes from the Rigelian dispute. The humans had established mining operations in an uninhabited system that the Rigelian Compact claimed as their ancestral territory. Rather than engaging in the expected territorial conflict, the humans invited Rigelian observers to their central operations facility. There, they demonstrated a single weapon, a precision kinetic impactor that could target and eliminate individual Rigelian vessels with minimal collateral damage. They fired exactly one shot, destroying an unmanned drone. Then they proposed terms: joint mining rights, shared infrastructure costs, equitable profit distribution. The Rigelians accepted within a standard day. Not a single sentient being died. When I interviewed the human commander responsible for this resolution years later, I asked why they hadn't simply demonstrated their superior firepower more conventionally. "Excessive force is inefficient," she said, as though explaining a fundamental natural law. "It creates unnecessary enemies, generates avoidable wastage, and completes the mission with suboptimal parameters." She spoke not as a philosopher or a diplomat, but as a creature shaped by a world where wastefulness was synonymous with death. The death world had taught humans that survival wasn't about maximizing destruction. It was about minimizing expenditure while achieving objectives. More disturbing still were the psychological profiles of the humans who carried out these operations. They were not fanatics or sadists. They were extraordinarily ordinary. Soldiers and agents who quietly did what they believed necessary, then returned to lives of remarkable normality. Parents, community volunteers, artists. The psychological compartmentalization required is almost beyond comprehension. I have come to understand that this is the true genius and terror of humanity. They have recognized that empire building always has a cost in blood, always. But rather than paying that price wholesale, in grand battles and glorious conquests, they pay it retail, one calculated life at a time. The High Council fears the humans because of their expansion rate. That is a mistake. We should fear them because they have mastered the dark calculus of empire better than any species in galactic history. They have learned to build their dominion not on mountains of corpses, but on precisely placed foundations of individual sacrifices, most of them not even their own people. I close this analysis with a recommendation. We must not provoke the human, not because they are stronger, though they are formidable, but because they are more efficient in their application of violence than any species we have encountered. They have not transcended the bloody cost of creating an empire. They have simply learned to pay it in the coin of surgical precision rather than indiscriminate slaughter. And that, I suspect, makes them the most dangerous species in the galaxy. What compounds this danger is the nature of their evolutionary heritage. Having evolved on a death world, humans possess adaptability and resilience that borders on the supernatural. Most species that emerge from such harsh environments develop specialized adaptations, thick carapaces, redundant organ systems, highly specific environmental requirements. The trade-off for surviving such worlds is usually reduced flexibility. Not so with humans. They emerged from their crucible with generalized adaptations. Their bodies can withstand radiation levels that would sterilize other species. They can survive temperature variations that would kill most sentients. They can consume substances that would be lethal toxins to others. And most terrifying of all, they can endure psychological stresses that would break the minds of more specialized species. During my investigation, I uncovered medical records of human operatives who continued functioning effectively despite injuries that should have been incapacitating. Psychological evaluations of diplomats who maintained perfect composure while navigating complex negotiations after experiencing personal tragedies that would have driven our own negotiators to ritual suicide. Military after-action reports describing human soldiers adapting to battlefield conditions that changed hourly. while our own forces require days of acclimatization. This is the secret engine behind their imperial expansion. It is not merely their willingness to pay the price of empire in carefully measured doses of violence. It is their capacity to endure whatever price the universe demands of them. Their death world origin means they never expected the cosmos to be kind. They never expected expansion to be painless. They simply accepted the cost, minimized it where possible, and paid it without complaint when necessary. Consider the tragic case of the Elysian relay station. When the dimensional stabilizers failed during a routine maintenance cycle, the station was exposed to raw interstitial space. The 2 human engineers on duty manually engaged the emergency protocols, saving 327 lives, none of them human. Both engineers died in indescribable agony as their bodies were partially phased out of our dimension. The incident was recorded in full. I have reviewed the footage. What haunts me is not their deaths, but their methodical efficiency in the face of certain doom. They knew they were dead the moment the stabilizers failed. They knew exactly what awaited them, and yet they moved with calm precision, communicating clearly, following procedures to the letter. Their last recorded words were not cries of pain or fear, but confirmation codes to verify the evacuation sequence had properly engaged. Such beings do not stop. They do not surrender. They adapt, they endure, and they advance, one calculated step after another. I close this analysis with a recommendation. We must not provoke the humans. Not because they are stronger, though they are formidable, but because they have been shaped by forces more merciless than any we could bring to bear against them. Their efficiency in empire building is not a philosophical choice. It is the inevitable expression of a species that evolved on a world that taught them to survive by any means necessary, to calculate odds with cold precision, and to pay whatever price victory demands. Personal addendum. After filing this report, I have requested reassignment from the Historical Analysis Division. Some knowledge changes those who acquire it, and I find I no longer sleep well under the light of unfamiliar stars. The thought that keeps me awake is not what humans have accomplished, but what they would become if truly threatened. We have seen only their calculated restraint, never their full terrible potential. May we never witness the latter. Thank you for listening to this story. I hope you enjoyed it. Be sure to leave this video a like and subscribe if you want to see more stuff like this. Video shares, memberships, and super thanks help the channel grow as well, so feel free to partner with this channel in that way as we grow. With that all said, thank you again for listening to the story, and thank you for your time. On the left side of your screen are some videos I think you might be interested in. I hope to see you in the next one.